And again, it's like 30 minutes. Hello, everyone. I see that people are joining. So we'll take a few seconds and wait for everyone to join the call. And it takes a few moments for everyone to transition from the waiting room. And while we wait, as you know, I'm Sabrina Paganoni. It's always a pleasure to have these weekly meetings on the co-PI of the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial. And today I'm joined as every week by our patient navigation team, Alison Bullitt and Catherine Small, whom you know well. And as I see that people join, I see many names that are very familiar. Thank you for joining us on a weekly basis, as well as new names. So welcome to all of you are new. So today, for our weekly updates, it is my absolute pleasure and honor of introducing Dr. Goyal, a dear colleague. She trained me on EMGs and neuromuscular disease, and is now really a fantastic PI and really leader in ALS trials and research in neuromuscular disease in general. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Goyal so that she can tell us about her site and her experience in the platform trial.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabrina, for Dr. Paganoni for this wonderful introduction. As Dr. Paganoni said, I am an ALS doctor. I am a neuromuscular physician. I was actually, my roots are from Mass General. I was trained at Mass General with Dr. Sikovich back in 2006, 2005, and then I stayed on faculty there for 8 years. And one of the reasons that I moved out here to UC Irvine in 2012 was I noticed that a lot of the clinical trials, especially the cutting edge, really cool ones, were being done in Boston and the East Coast. And I thought, I really want to be a West Coast site and collaborate with my colleagues at Mass General and bring some really new innovative trials to the West Coast. Am I able to advance the slides, Catherine? Oh, okay. So thank you. We can go to the next slide. And so I'm currently at UC Irvine. And for those of you that don't know, UC Irvine is located in Orange County. It's basically just between LA and San Diego. And it's a sweet spot where we're the only academic center in Orange County, and we serve a huge catchment area with really a diverse patient population. It's a beautiful area. We're probably 15 miles from one of the best beaches in the US. And it's a really nice pocket of area where we're not plagued with the traffic that LA sees, and makes it much more feasible for patients to come in and out of our center. Next slide. So you can see here, this is our neuromuscular center, and it's actually a beautiful outpatient building about 2 blocks from the main hospital. We have a dedicated ALS clinic as well as a Muscular Dystrophy Association clinic. Next slide. We are designated and we're nationally recognized as an ALS center, certified center of excellence. We have a number of comprehensive multidisciplinary clinics. We really do state-of-the-art diagnostic testing from EMGs to muscle pathology. And we now have a number of cutting-edge clinical trials in a variety of neuromuscular disorders, but of course, especially ALS. Next slide. We have 4 full-time neuromuscular physicians, all trained. You can see here on the bottom, we've all been trained from really wonderful centers, and we all bring our own expertise about ALS and our own sort of perspective on what we should be doing for ALS. Next slide. We also have 2 junior faculty that have trained with us and joined our group. So we now have 6 ALS physicians. That really enables us to get ALS patients in and out of clinic in a timely fashion with a reduced wait time. Next slide. And we care for about 250 ALS patients. All of these patients are seen by a multidisciplinary team, and all of the patients, if they qualify, are always offered opportunities for clinical trials. Next slide. So this is just a part of our neuromuscular clinical trial research team. We really have a dedicated team. These are many of our coordinators, but now our numbers are growing because our research is growing. All of these coordinators really feel passionate about trying to help ALS. We don't believe that we should just do standard of care in ALS. Our entire team feels that we should really be looking for a therapy to help our patients either stop or slow down the progression of ALS. And one of these coordinators, Jeanette, who I'm going to highlight right in the middle, is one of my main ALS coordinators who's done several clinical trials. Patients who know her love her. She goes out of her way to make sure patient questions are answered. She's available for them night and day. One of our studies that we had recently done, the Brainstorm stem cell trial, she was the main coordinator for that and really went out of her way to help patients. And now we're proud to be a part of the HEALEY team. Next slide. And we were slow to begin with. A lot of it had to do with COVID delays and just paperwork delays. But finally, in the past few weeks, we've really had a robust start to the trial. And in the next few weeks, we have patients lined up for the next few weeks. And what I really love about the HEALEY trial is it certainly is a plus for patients because to have less of a placebo group is certainly a win for ALS patients. And the fact that after the study portion is completed, the patients get an opportunity to go on the drug for free or have an opportunity and a choice to get screened for another arm of the drug, I think is a really, really neat design and a win-win opportunity for a patient. I don't know if my clinical trial coordinator, Jeanette, is on, if she wants to say anything more.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
I hope that we can make it work technically, but I don't know
okay.
if we can bring her in as a panelist. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay,
I'm unfortunately too old to be able to do this on the fly. So my apologies, Jeanette.
No problem. She just, Jeanette really wanted the patients to know, please contact her or email her for any questions, concerns about the HEALEY trial. She will help you get pre-screened, make sure your paperwork is ready to go, and we would love to see you for getting you in this trial.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So thank you, Dr. Goyal and Jeanette. I'm sorry we didn't have an opportunity to have you speak, but please reach out to her if you are in beautiful Orange County. I know it's not, I always wish you came back to Boston, but I had to say I know you are in a beautiful location and great work serving people in that area. So thank you for your participation. I think we can give our usual weekly enrollment updates. So if we can go to the next slide, we can show our numbers. Oh, that's where you are, UCI. That's nice. So as Dr. Goyal explained, this is a trial, as you know, but for those of you who are new, where we are testing multiple investigational products in parallel. And so each participant will receive one of the 4 products that are listed on the slide. And then at the end of the placebo-controlled period, they have the option and choice to either go on open label extension for that particular product or re-enter the trial if they're still eligible. For those of you who have been following us on a weekly basis, you know that we are making excellent progress thanks to dedicated sites like UCI, and we are really getting very close to completing enrollment in the first 3 regimens. So if you want to share the numbers on the next slide, we can see where we are. So at this point, over 700 people with ALS signed informed consent, over 600 were assigned to a regimen, over 500 were randomized within a regimen, and we already have over 200 people in the open label extension. So those are the people that completed the placebo control period, and over 80% of them chose to enter the open label extension, and again, will remain, if they choose to continue, on active drug until we know the results of the regimen. Now, the good news is that we're almost fully enrolled with regimens A, B, and C. As you can see here, our target numbers are approximately 160. So we're basically essentially at target for B and C and getting very close to A. Again, it doesn't have to be exactly 160. It's approximately 160. So we should be completing A very soon, and then we will be able to announce again completion of enrollment in A, B, and C. D is also making great progress, only that it started 6 months later. That's the only reason why they have fewer participants. And so once all 3 have been fully enrolled, that basically that starts the clock, the 6-month clock, because after that, we need to follow everyone for 6 months, including the last few people to enter the trial. After 6 months, then we will have essentially the complete data set for the placebo control period, and we will be able to work on the final data set. It's going to take some time to process it, but again, we're already working on that. Essentially, we're already working on the process of closing out the study and then analyzing the results rapidly after the follow-up has been completed for all participants. So again, exciting news. I hope that we'll be able to announce completion of enrollment very soon for A, B, and C. Next slide. So as always, please reach out to Catherine and Alison who are on the line today. We have QR codes and links on the slide, so you can always go back to the website, and we post information, updated information on the website as well. Next slide. So we are taking a tour around the country. As you know, we're very excited to get to know dedicated teams like Dr. Goyal's team. And so I think we don't have a special guest next week yet, but we do have Dr. Walk scheduled to come and join us from the University of Minnesota in mid-October. We're not going to have a webinar on October 7th because we have the annual NILS meeting. We have a conference on that day. So unfortunately, we won't be able to meet on that day, but we will see you the week before and the week after. And again, we continue to work with sites to schedule more PIs to more site investigators to come on these webinars so that we can get to know the sites and share information. And again, for every principal investigator, there's always a dedicated team, as Dr. Goyal said, and shared a beautiful picture of her coordinators and site team that can work with participants and people who are interested in this trial or other trial opportunities. Next slide. And just as a reminder, we do have a number of new webinars that continue to be posted on the NILS website. As you know, we are part of the NILS consortium, and several of our colleagues continue to give webinars, and they remain archived and freely available. So we had a recent webinar, 2 of my colleagues, Dr. Bedlak and Sokovic, gave, so the recording is available. We also gave another webinar today with Dr. Sokovic about the AMX35 trial, so that the recording should be on the website very soon, and we can also share the slides. I think a few people asked about that, so we'll be circulating everything over the next couple of days. So great. So with that, I think we can stop sharing and start asking your questions. So we're monitoring the chat or QA box. So if you have any questions, please you can type them, and maybe Dr. Goyal, I can ask you a few questions and we can tag team with taking questions live. So someone asked about regimen D. which is testing predopidine, which also has some data and relationship with respect to the sigma-1 receptor gene. So the question is whether predopidine is for genetic ALS or sporadic ALS. In other words, is regimen D, indicated and appropriate for all forms of ALS or just for specific genes?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question, but given the way the study is designed, I believe it's for all sporadic and genetic forms of ALS. They are not limiting it to one group or another. And I think that has to, again, do with, we do think that there is a role for this drug based on the pathomechanisms that we have thought about as a potential cause for ALS. We do believe that it would be effective in all patients with ALS.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we just received a call, a message about the target enrollment. As we shared in previous webinars, the target enrollment is approximately 160. So the question is, does it have to be 160 to be accurate, or can you be just more or less 160? So that's a great question. So protocols are most of the times, most often written for an approximate number, where approximately we really mean a tight window of 10% variation at the most. And that's because basically when you have people in screening, you don't know if all of them will screen in or not. So somebody comes in, signs informed consent, and then they have to get labs and EKGs and make sure that they are eligible for the trial. So this is a dynamic situation at over 50 sites across the country. So if we only wanted to if we could only enroll it in a set number of, only one, for example, 160, and cannot go over, that would be very difficult to do operationally, because it means that when you have people in screening, you would have to continue to basically stop the trial and wait and make sure that everyone can get in and not go over 160. Instead, it's actually a good thing to have the word approximately in there, so that it's about 160, so that we can ensure that people who have come in for screening can continue if they're screening. So that's why we go slightly over to make sure that everyone that is in the screening process can still go in. We don't want to turn away anyone. And actually, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say I agree with you, Dr. Paganoni, and I think that's actually a beauty of the study design, because in the past, other companies have designed trials where they strictly wanted a certain number, and that actually was quite challenging in a patient that potentially screened this week, but let's say that by the end of the week, they had already completed the target enrollment, the patient that screened on Monday, and we were thinking they would qualify by next week, would then not be allowed in the study.
Exactly.
By having the word approximate, it's actually a very nice study design. And doing ALS trials for 15 years, as an investigator, I very much appreciate it, because as I'm seeing a patient and they really want to be in the study, we don't want to break their heart and say, oh yes, you screened and qualified for the study, but unfortunately they met target enrollment and we're now not able to do
right.
The
So
way
it
you
has,
have
yeah.
designed is, allows for those patients to enroll if they qualify.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it has happened in the past, as you said, in some studies that people were sort of turned away. That had to do in the past with other studies, not this one, when there was concern about drug availability. So sometimes companies only have the exact amount, and so they cannot enroll even one extra person. So having that small flexibility actually helps in terms of screening when you have people coming in at the same time and multiple sites, so you can accommodate a couple extra people. The other thing is that actually statistically more people is better. So to have just a few extra people is also a good thing in general.
Yeah, that's right too, because as we all know, sometimes people just change their mind, or given life situations, something happens and they're not able to. So by allowing for a little bit more, it allows the study to reach their statistical power to get the full analysis at the end of the study, which actually benefits everyone.
Yeah, Exactly. So there's a question about specific sites, whether the new sites that are being added. So I can take that. So we are adding 22 new sites, essentially for, they will be added over the next few weeks, especially for the new regimens. And so we're working on activation. So none of the new sites has been activated yet, but that should happen over the next few weeks. So we'll be sure to announce that maybe at one of these webinars as soon as sites are activated. So what happens is that once a site is identified, there's still a few steps that need to happen, like contract execution and training and all those things. And so unfortunately, until they complete all these steps, they cannot accept participants, unfortunately. And so again, we'll make sure to announce them before they're activated, but again, not yet, because they have not completed all the steps. So there's a question about upper motor neurons and lower motor neurons. So I wanted to ask that to you, Dr. Goyal. Can you give us a sense in terms of, when we do drug development for ALS, do we try to target upper motor neuron or lower motor neurons? And what's really the goal of these trials? Is it to slow down upper and or lower motor neuron problems, or stop the problem, or reverse? If you could explain that.
Yeah, that's a great, very complex question that I think all of us ALS physicians try to really deeply understand and better think of. As we know, ALS is really a combination of changes in our upper motor neuron system and lower motor neuron system, so it's a combination. However, in a subset of patients, some will have more progression with their upper motor neurons, and others may have more progression with their lower motor neuron. At this time, we're not really able to exactly define and separate out how someone may evolve over time. A lot of times we do classify patients as upper motor neuron predominant or lower motor neuron predominant. But I believe at this time, the goal really of the drugs are to affect all motor neurons, both in the upper motor neuron and lower motor neuron system. And while we would love to stop the progression of ALS, we would even think that any of these changes in either the upper or lower motor neuron system could potentially effectively slow down progression. And that would certainly be a win for ALS as well. I don't know if you have any more insight on that.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And naturally, along those lines, if you somebody asked about bulbar onset ALS, what are your thoughts in terms of choosing the trial for bulbar onset ALS, or would that be again in the same group of trials that we are considering?
Yeah, I see where people are going with this question. I think a lot of people are wondering, do we now have specific trials dedicated to certain types of ALS? And these are clearly very smart patients that are reading all the same books and webinars that we're all attending as ALS physicians. But I think what people are alluding to is that we're now starting to think that ALS is one big umbrella term, and there are different phenotypes or different types of ALS. At this time, our trials are really designed to cater to all types of ALS. So fortunately or unfortunately, but I think of it as fortunately, we're not separating out a type of ALS and saying, oh, if you have bulbar ALS, you do or don't qualify for a certain trial. As long as you meet some of the specific inclusion criteria, which is symptom duration and what your breathing forced vital capacity numbers show, along with some of the other criteria, we're not differentiating your inclusion based on the type of ALS you have.
Right. Right. I see a few questions coming in about the new sites. So I would encourage people to reach out to the patient navigation team and be in contact, and we'll definitely share information about new sites. Quite frankly, I don't remember where they are located. I know different people ask me about different states. I know we're really trying to broaden geographic reach. What we're doing right now, as really these weeks, is to train the sites and complete all the administrative steps, and we'll be ready, I'm sure, to announce all the names as soon as they get closer to activation. So what happens in trials is that sometimes some sites can be selected, but they're never activated because, for example, their institution doesn't approve some of the steps, or there are contracts issues or training issues, or there's COVID or other things. So that's why I think there is a little bit of a fine balance between sort of announcing the sites that have been selected, but also waiting until they are at least on their way to being activated before sharing the names, because some of them might never be activated. So again, we're certainly actively working on this. Along those lines, there's a few questions about new drugs. So we did issue a few press releases about the drugs that have been selected. So if you go on our website, and maybe Catherine, if you don't mind placing in the chat some of those links to all the websites, etc., so that people can go back and see exactly the names. So we announced that there's a new drug that's manufactured by Silos. That's going to be the next regimen. So after D, we're going to have regimen E. That's the drug, produced by Silos Therapeutics. And then we have other drugs have been selected again as announced on the press releases, including IC14, RNS60. And so those are, again, have been announced, and again, we're working on the next steps with different companies. So we will continue to provide updates. Again, selection that doesn't imply a certain timeline. So we're going to continue to work with all the companies and all the sites. There's a question, actually, if I can ask you, Dr. Goyal, are there any stem cells in the trial? I know you worked on many.
In the current HEALEY platform trial, right now we don't have stem cells. As you know, the phase 3 brainstorm neuron stem cell trial outside of HEALEY was completed, and unfortunately the trial was negative. So I know a lot of patients think stem cells may be the sexiest drug out there and the win, but I would say that currently the science is all sort of level field because the phase 3 study for the brainstorm stem cell trial was negative.
Thank you. I see a nice comment from someone living from out of sort of a different state where there's not a site available. So thank you for connecting. I don't know if they connected with you, Dr. Goyal, or other sites, but thank you for traveling and being able to enroll. So as we discussed, that what's important is it's not so much where somebody lives, but if they have access to a site, if they can go and reliably participate.
Yeah, that's true, Dr. Paganoni. We have had some neighboring state patients come to our site, and just again, another plug is that they really enjoy coming to our site. We have a wonderful team, and the surrounding area is a nice perk as well.
Yeah. Definitely. So there's a question about the press release that went out from Clean about the expanded access. So I just want to share again, we're very excited to be working with Clean. We are, as you know, we're big proponents of expanded access. We've had a few single center expanded access or EAP programs at our hospital at MGH for the last couple of years, and one of them is with Clean, so that they kind of share that this was already public knowledge, was already on our website. We will continue to post news on our website about our EAPs, but essentially we have good experience, with a few drugs as a single center, and now we are expanding to have an EAP companion at as many sites as possible on the platform trial. So, somebody asked about results from the expanded access. So I think, expanded access, the main goal is really to provide access, as sort of the name says. It's not, expanded access programs are not meant to test scientific hypotheses. In other words, they're not meant to test if a drug is effective, but they're very helpful in providing access to people who are not eligible to participate in trials. There are a few things that one can learn from EAPs, and that's a great thing, to monitor safety and some biomarker data. We don't have the final results of those, but again, the main goal of expanded access is to provide access. There's a few great questions about the timelines, and so just to quickly take them. So as I shared, we are gonna complete enrollment in regimens A, B, and C very soon. That does mean that D will be alone for hopefully a short period of time, because we're already working on E, the next regimen. So it is possible that there might be maybe a few weeks when D is alone, and in that case, yes, all participants that are screened during those few weeks or are assigned during those 2 weeks would all go automatically into that regimen if they're eligible. And then we should have a second regimen, kind of running at the same time. It's possible. I mean, I had to say, we launched this study with 3 regimens at the same time. That was kind of the launch, but it's actually common practice in platform trials in other disease areas to have variable numbers of regimens at any given time. In other words, you could have, a few months when you have 3 or 4 open, like we have right now, or there could be other times when you only have 1 open. And that's part of the concept, to continue to keep the platform open so that there's no lag time. And whether there's 1, 2, 3, or 4 at any given time, obviously we hope to have more than 1, because that way we can make progress faster, but that's actually part of the process. So I wouldn't expect to always have 4. It doesn't have to be that way. It just works, it works just as well to have again variable numbers. And so essentially, if a question about the timelines, after A, B, and C complete enrollment, then we know that about 6 months later, we will finish the follow-up of the last people who enroll in A, B, and C. At that time, we will start analyzing the results while people are on open label, if they choose to be on open label. So how long that's going to take to analyze all the results and submit the information to the FDA, that's part of the question. So I would say that we are already working on the process in terms of laying out the structure, because there's a very specific way that data needs to be structured and analyzed. So even if we don't have the final data, we're already building the structure to be able to analyze it, and it's by industry standards, it's about 3 months or so to get the data ready. And then obviously there's multiple steps for FDA submissions and approval. So I kind of explained actually some of the steps during today's webinar. Niels also has a series of archived webinars that explain the different steps and how that works. Questions about expanded access. So at this time, somebody asked which regimens support expanded access. As of right now, we have regimens B, C, and D that are partnering with us on an expanded access program. B is already open, and C was the subject of a press release today, and D will open over the next few weeks. But we hope to continue to add more regimens, more sites, and more participants, so more to come on that. Maybe for the last question, Dr. Goyal, can you help us understand how you work with your participants to think about the open label extension? How do you help them kind of make that decision once they finish the placebo control period? And can you help us understand, can they switch regimen, or do they just stay in the open label extension for that original regimen?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something that we talk about even before we start screening the patient, is what the potential options might be at the end of the study. So at the end of the study period that's been completed, as Dr. Paganoni mentioned, you have the option of either going on to open label, and open label means staying within the same regimen, but now, because there is a chance that you may be on placebo within that regimen, but now definitely getting that drug within that regimen. Or if you choose that you would really like to try to see if you can go into another regimen. You would then be re-randomized. If you meet the inclusion criteria, you would be rescreened to then potentially qualify for another regimen. What's important to note, what I discuss with my patients is we want to game this process, right? So if you're doing well and you feel like you have benefited from staying on this regimen, I generally ask my patients, here's now your opportunity to stay on study drug, but you know you're definitely getting study drug. Um, and, you know, unfortunately, over a period of time, some patients do progress. And if they don't seem to qualify for rescreening for another regimen, my advice to them is stay on this regimen because you don't have to screen if you're staying on the open label extension period. However, if they are doing great and they're very interested in trying a new regimen and they seem to be meeting the inclusion criteria, then we have a discussion about retrying another regimen, should they wish. But the nice thing about this and the beauty of this is a lot of it is based on the patient's wishes, which I think is important and empowers the patient, as long as they meet the inclusion criteria.
Thank you. Yeah. And thank you, Catherine, for posting a few links in the chat. I also see that there's a few questions about expanded access, and perhaps the person who asked, if you want to reach out to Catherine, we have some material that we can share about expanded access. We also have a link to our website. Actually, I'll work on updating the website page, but we can share that as well. And so actually, maybe the last question that just came in, if you, Dr. Goyal, can you tell us what do you discuss with your patients aside from the trial, if there's any type of regimen, vitamins, supplements to delay the onset of ALS for somebody who has a family history of ALS?
If someone has a family
history, yeah.
ALS, well, I think regardless of family history or not, some supplements that are being looked at and are highly regarded are B12 supplements. Creatine and coenzyme Q are some supplements that patients talk about. I also refer them to Dr. Bedlack's website, ALS Untangled. I think it does a very nice job of systematically looking at supplements and seeing if there is potential benefit, what studies have been done. And that's an easily accessible website, ALS Untangled, where it gives you a more systematic review of how to think about supplements.
Perfect. That's great. That was helpful. And I see that Catherine already posted the link. So thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Goyal, for being here. I know we're far geographically, but we always think about you. And thank you to all your site staff for all the work that you do. And thanks everyone for participating. Please reach out to Alison and Catherine. And we'll see you again next week. Thank you so much.
You.
Thank you. Thank you.